Okay, today we're going to get back to a project. I put a brushless system in my wraith here, and I ended up taking it back out. It was way too fast for the configuration I had on this, and all I was doing, as you can see, is rolling this thing over, kind of tearing up my aluminum parts. So I got to get on here and kind of sand these back down and get it back in. And I guess I'm gonna have to finally paint this. I kind of liked it all aluminum and silver like that, but now I've kind of tore it up a little bit. So what I picked up was, I was online and I found this, fairly cheap. I got a Tama torque tuned motor, which when I looked up, it's about a 25 turn. And then I picked up the ESC, came with it, and this is a brushless or brushed ESC. So we're going to put this on there and get it back to a reasonable speed where I can still trail with it, and it'll go a little bit fast, but nothing crazy. Because this thing with the brushless, it was just either going wheelies forward or wheelies backwards, flipping over, wrecking, turning sideways. I think if you're going to make this real fast, you're going to need to extend the wheelbase. Definitely change out the plastic steering, because you see here, this thing is very flexible. And when you were running the brushless, you'd get turned, and the weight of it wanted to make it act stupid. So let me start taking this thing back apart, and I'm also going to do a little detail on the interior. I think I'm going to paint the seats and the interior a little bit and kind of fancy it up. And we're going to paint all these aluminum panels. I'll most likely take my luggage rack off and leave it the aluminum. This back hook I'm probably going to leave aluminum. I'll tape it off, and we'll remove these decals, paint this. I think I'm going to paint it a green. I kind of love green. And I might even spray these metal covers back here. When I bought these, I thought they were aluminum. Then I found out they were just painted. So I might as well paint them to green. So let me start disassembling this thing, and we'll give you an idea of what we're going to do. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, well, we got our body panels off. Like I said, we're going to change this quite a bit. So what I got to do is I got to get the interior out, which is not necessarily needed for the motor swap, because with these, sorry about that, the transmission plate, you just unscrew these and it'll drop right down, and you can put the transmission back in with no problem. But like I said, I do want to work on the interior some. So what I got to do is I'm going to take the whole interior out and get our guy there. And I've been taking this apart, so you just basically almost have to disassemble the frame and to get that out. Of course, I can't find my cutters when I need them. There you are. So I've used a tie wrap for a seat belt for the driver, because he always comes flying out if you don't. And so we'll get him all back together and cleaned up. Get him out of there, and this stuff out here. Okay. Now what I'm thinking of doing is, where this interior, I got stickers on these seats. I'm thinking of changing it, painting this inside part here red or green, and then up here where the black stickers were, put a little bit of the green too. So that'll either that or just paint this part green and all this in here black. Hadn't made up my mind yet, so but that's what I'm tearing apart to do. And I got to do a little work on my servo winch here. I never could get that to stop drifting, So what I actually did was I bought a controller for an actual winch, and what I'm going to do is just desolder everything, put me a connector on the motor, and use a controller, and then I can still use my winch, because the Wraith doesn't really have anywhere I like to mount a winch unless you change the bumpers and all that. So I prefer the servo winch because it's tucked up under here out of the way, and we'll take care of it from there. Alright, well, I'm going to take this a little bit more apart, and I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay, well, we've gotten the interior out, and this little switch right here was for my underglow lights, excuse me. I don't believe I'm going to use them either. So here's all our parts. We got a mess here, so, and I'll probably be putting the motor back in the transmission and get the ESC programmed. I got the new receiver, 4-channel. We're going to work on a little bit here is to get my servo winch working correctly, so I got to take that out too. So almost a full disassemble of this thing just to revamp it. So, but like I said, I'm going to do some painting. Probably going to paint these green too, since I'm going to change the color of everything and work on my lights and straighten all that up. Like I said, that brushless kind of beat it up, so I'm gonna get it back to working condition here. And so, like I said, it's almost going to take a full disassembly, so we'll get that going, and be right back with it. Alright, be back in a minute. Okay, we're back with the Wraith revamp. I've gotten everything taken out of it, and it's been a few days since I've done this, because I want to paint the body panels and everything. So we got our motor installed and ready to go. We got our ESC installed and everything all hooked up, ready to go when we go to put it back together. Now what I still got to do is I got to take my servo winch here. I'm going to take it apart. Get a better look, sorry about that. I'm going to take it apart and get rid of the interior parts for the servo interior parts that would run the motor. And what I'm going to hook on it instead is a winch controller that I got from 3 Racing RC. And the winch controller is going to take over all the electronicing part of it. That way it'll work with a 3-channel better, and I don't have to keep guessing if it's centered or have the drift. So what I got was the regular old winch controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook that in, take this apart, get our electronic parts out, and just hook the motor itself up to the, I'll hook some wires to it and it'll hook to the winch controller instead. Now what I've also done is I've painted my body panels kind of camo. It's the back plate. Can't see it very well. Let's bring it over here. There's the back plate. There's the hood. And then the side panels. And here's the other one. So just kind of camoed it up some. So I'm kind of liking the look of that. And I've also got the roof, and I went ahead and camoed the luggage rack and everything. So the panels are ready to go whenever the truck gets ready to put back together. So I guess the first thing I got to do is kind of figure out the servo winch. So let me get that going and get all this other stuff cleared off, and I'll be right back. Okay, we got the plate off and our spool off. Now what we got to do is take our servo apart. If you're wondering how I made this servo winch, I just went online. There's all kinds of sites that'll show you how to do it. It's really not that hard, so I'm not going to go through that. But I don't remember what the inside of this looked like. If I got to do something crazy or not to get the motor off. Yeah, so it looks like the circuit board best bet is to try and take these off as close to the same as possible. So you can remember how to put it back together. And just pop it out. Might have to take a little screwdriver and work on this end where the motor is, but once you get it out a little, it's not that big of a deal. There you go. So basically what I'm going to try and do is see if I can get this to work. I'll just solder some wires onto this and bypass this whole circuit board and just put it back in there. I see why it was giving me so much trouble. The crazy glue came off the little knob. Alright, give me a minute to look at this real good and I'll be right back. Okay, now what we're going to do first is we're going to, what I call, butter the ends of the wires. So you need to put a little flux on it. Just about out of solder here. There you go, get a little wire. Flux on the wire. Alright, now what we're going to do next is we're going to desolder, let's see if I can focus here, desolder this motor off of this circuit board. I'm going to try not to mess up that board because I've had some servos where the motor's been good but the board got wet or something and ruined it. So what I'm going to try and do is take my desoldering tool, melt this down without tearing up the board. Love that. Alright. There we go. One desoldered motor. You can get these tools off eBay. They're pretty cheap. they're worth the investment. Sorry for the arms there. Alright, so we desoldered the board, and like I said, this is still good. What I can also use with this board is I can run a wire through, kind of like I did this one, and make it a light controller, which will turn the lights on and off. So that's pretty cool. Alright, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder these wires onto the motor. And the motor does have a little red spot on it, so it tells you which side was positive. So we'll put that back on there and grab a little bit of solder, butter our ends on the motor too. I'm going to try to do this at a little angle, since it's going to have to sit in the case and come out the other side, so I'm hoping this will. I'm not the best solderer in the world, but I think that'll do. So here we are now. And of course, before we go through all the trouble putting it back together, I want to make sure that this will work. So what I've got is, we'll get this stuff out of the way. Here's the 3 racing winch control. It's not too hot, so what I can do is take this off. And I'll hook this all up to a battery and everything. So give me a second, I'll be right back. Okay, it seemed to have worked. Now my wires are backwards, and I don't know why that is. This will only plug up one way, but this was off a battery, and maybe that's done on purpose. But it doesn't really matter, because it just reversed the polarity. So as long as it'll plug up, it'll be alright. I don't know if you can see the teeth. Let's see. Alright, when I hit the switch, there it goes forward, backwards, forward, backwards. So it seems to work real good, and there's no drift. So now I'm going to try and see if I can get this back together without messing nothing up. So we'll unplug the battery first and disconnect the controller. Well, that's tight. Alright, and I think there's a little pocket in here that this motor sits down in, so I believe it'll be alright. And I can just stick this wire through here. So what we got to do now is put everything back together in here. I almost forgot how to do it. This goes in here. This goes there. Let's see. Yeah, that's what it was. Tell you, sometimes it'll pay you to take a picture. Let's get this back on here. This will slide down in here. Alright. Give me just a second, I've lost my mind. Let me remember how to do this. Okay. I was doing it right. I just couldn't get the pin to set in there. So this is what the finish looks like. And then we'll slide this cover back on. That'll hold all that together. Then that gives us our motor sitting out here, and we want to make sure these wires go in the little thing. I'm going to slide these screws out so they don't fight me. Oops, sorry for the being all hands there. And we'll just slide this lid back on. And we put these screws back in, and we should be good to go. So let's plug this back up and see what we got. And there you go. Worked out pretty good. Then we'll just put the thing back on here, bobbin, so you can actually see it work. Down and up. Alright, so now we got that going, let's get back to putting this thing back together. Alright, I'll be back in a second. Okay, now we got the winch down again. We can put this plate back in, which is kind of a nightmare in itself. Had to put a few of these things back together just to do that. So what this plate does is this plate will fit down in here, but it's got to go between all these posts and everything else. So I'm going to start putting that back in. It's be kind of boring to watch, and nobody needs to hear me cuss. So give me a minute and I'll get this in and I'll be right back. Okay, we got the servo winch back in, everything lined back up. Hooked our shock towers back in. Now it's basically just reassembling the whole thing. But this video is gonna, seems like it's getting a little long, and I still got to put all the interior and everything else in. So what I'm going to do is end this right here for now, and then we'll come back with a part 2. So I hope you like what you've seen so far, and I hope it helped somebody. And please subscribe. Please like and also comment, and you have a nice day.